everybody, it's Dr. Laura Davis, and welcome to the third installment all about boundaries. So today we're going to talk about how to set boundaries, what gets in the way of setting boundaries, and some common misconceptions. So go ahead and hit subscribe and the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video so you can stay in the loop. Go ahead and watch my other videos on boundaries if you haven't yet seen those. And yeah, so how to set boundaries. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So first, when you're setting a boundary, you want to be as clear as possible. In one of Brene Brown's books, she talked about how being clear is kind, and absolutely loved that, because it is kind, because we get to know what's okay and not okay. There's no wishy-washy, nobody gets upset, as long as everyone's being clear. Of course, you may get upset if someone does cross a boundary, but chances are lowered when you're very clear about that. And if it's appropriate, let them know if there are certain consequences. So for example, what comes up in families a lot is, people go and visit their families, they, maybe get ridiculed in some way, and, so you can say, this really hurts my feelings when you talk about me this way. So if it continues to happen, I'm no longer going to come to family gatherings. And that was really tough, but it's clear and it's kind, and people know what's going to happen. And you want to be firm with your boundaries and really stick to them. So we can learn to be flexible, of course, but if we really disregard what we say, people take advantage of it, because it's really you're saying it's okay. So for example, if a boss is like, could you take on this and this project? And at first you're like, gosh, I would, but I'm really busy and I can't devote the time that I need to it right now. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I could. So that completely negated everything, right? Because they're like, oh, fantastic, you can do it. You end up, really running yourself ragged by getting it done. So you want to be firm, because people are going to push, and we have to stay firm about that. And really knowing why a boundary is important to you, really knowing that why, you're going to be better able to talk to other people about that boundaries, because you'll know why it's so important to you. And the more that you're comfortable with that and clear on that, the easier it's going to be to talk to other people about it. So let's talk about what gets in the way. Big one is guilt. They might be mad or disappointed in me. And they might be. And that emotion is theirs and not yours. And boundary setting can cause some upset, because it's putting something that wasn't there before. So there is going to probably be some pushback at times. Not always. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Okay, cool, move on. Sometimes it is, and it's a big upset, so there has to be some readjustment time to it. And most often, if it's a healthy, respectful sort of relationship, that upset will kind of fade in time. Or if not, then we have to do some reevaluation of how much I want this relationship in my life. That's hard. Fear of rejection is a really big one too. If I put this boundary, they might leave. People might leave. And if that's the case, they probably weren't a great person to be in your life in the first place. And that can be a really hard piece to wrap your mind around as well. And then people don't like confrontation, because it can be hard for a lot of people. And really being vulnerable with this type of confrontation, it can be uncomfortable, but also extremely courageous and extremely empowering, and it can have massive positive results. So it's kind of taking the discomfort for a while to be healthier in the long run. So kind of similarly to like working out, like it can be uncomfortable during, but you know it has lasting impacts on your health and wellness. So some common misconceptions are, if I set a boundary, everything's going to be peachy keen. As you've probably figured out from these last few points, that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, but not always. And, you know, sometimes it does end relationships that weren't healthy, or it causes some upset for a while. And, you know, that is a really hard thing to go through, especially if I see this mostly with family. Boundaries are really hard because it's a pattern that you've had for years and years and years, so it's not going to change overnight. Telling a boundary once doesn't mean it's going to automatically, everyone's going to follow the rule. Absolutely not. So if it's important to you to kind of keep going over, do reminders, but you know, there is a limit in that as well, depending on what the boundary is about. And the other piece is sometimes people confuse boundary setting with controlling another person's behavior. We cannot control other people's behavior. We cannot control other people's behavior. We just can't, as much as we would like to sometimes. That's not in our power. Boundaries are really about changing ourselves. It's about speaking up for what we want and what we feel like we need and believe in, for ourselves to have a healthy life, and knowing when we need to pull away if it's, you know, not kind of working with what we're wanting at that time, and being aware of that. So it's really changing how we interact and what we say yes or no to. Do other people's behavior change sometimes? Absolutely, but that is not the goal with boundaries. I think sometimes that's hard for people to kind of wrap their minds around because they really want someone to kind of mesh in the way that meshes with them. I hate to break it to you that it doesn't always work that way. So it's more about, are we being clear, concise? Are we okay with walking away sometimes? And all of this can be really, you know, difficult. So get the support of a trusted friend, getting in with a therapist to really kind of support you through this, talk through it. I often kind of role play boundary settings and kind of get you ready for the upsets that might happen and how might you respond, because sometimes it can be very emotionally charged. So it's really important to have some supports there when going through something like this, especially if it's one that's been a pattern for many years. All that said though, boundaries can completely change your life, and really start to create what you want from life. And it feels so much healthier. You get so much more shit done, and you feel so much more positive. You're able to be really helpful when you want to, and give wholeheartedly when you choose to do something, and there's not that resentment built up. So even with all this, the difficult parts of it, it can still be so much of a change for your life for the better. All right, so thank you for tuning in again. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and head on over to my website at drlaradavis.com, where I talk even more about boundaries broken down by work, relationship, family, and friends. So go ahead and pop on over there and read that as well. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.